Hey guys, Gaia's here. Here we are again with a continuation on Gaia Gear. Part 10. 10 parts in, 10 episodes left. Things are about to get pretty interesting. As a recap of episode 16, we saw our heroes meet up with the Metatron forces of Europe. The team now has a squadron of new Gaia's Man Machines to back them up. Everly and Jack Bloom were interrogated by Yurien, and Darkle gives Yurien permission to form a new Manhunter strike team, tasked with destroying the Metatron resistance. All the while, Messer's anger reaches a boiling point, and he assaults Krishna, leaving the group to figure out what to do with him now that he's done it. With Avarachi reuniting with Miranda and told about Everly's current situation, we jump in again with the next episode, 17, titled Defeat. All images and characters are owned by their respective companies and creators. We cut to Captain Madra. Now that Miranda is here, we're given a brief rundown on the current status on the Manhunter forces that we last saw in Hong Kong. It seems after Zhang's defeat, the entire contingent of their forces stationed in Hong Kong were entirely wiped out by the Manhunters. The city was strangely devastated after Avarachi left, it seems, and from what he can gather, it didn't seem they really had a reason to capture Everly, but here they are now, all of them being under the assumption that she was captured all the way back after Avarachi left for space, as we can thank Jack Bloom most likely for that. But now she has been captured by Darkle, and it doesn't really change anything. Madra asks why Miranda left Avarachi in the dark about all this, and Miranda says at first she wasn't sure if she should tell him, but once she returned, she knew he had to know. When the captain asks why, Miranda says that Avarachi had to be made aware of the kind of position he's in. He's the entire face of Metatron. If Everly should die, then that needs to be kept a private matter. Sadness and grief are not things that some like Avarachi can go around showing to others, as he is their leader and they all rely on him for guidance. When Madra says he prefers that human side of Avarachi, Miranda is quick to say that he should be allowed to have feelings, but that he must learn to be in control of them. That is the very reason he was told about Everly now. Madra calls her strict, and Miranda says she has to be. If she isn't, then Avarachi wouldn't be of any good to them. He's too good of a person to fall. We then cut to an abandoned factory, to Avarachi as he thinks about this news. Everly is missing. As he worries about her and hopes she's okay, he begins to relive his memories of their childhood once again. The peaceful and beautiful memories on the beaches of their little island world. With those memories, Avarachi is left to ponder. Was it a mistake not to bring her with him? But before he can think about it anymore, Krishna comes over to visit him. She asks if he's okay, as she overheard what happened. Avarachi says he's fine, and Krishna tells him to cheer up. In all likelihood, the rumors aren't true, and she must have made it back home. Avarachi hopes so, but he can't help but be afraid. She'd never left the island before just like he did, and he worries if she would actually be able to make it home on her own. He knows she wouldn't be able to survive alone without him. As Avarachi stokes a makeshift fire, he wonders about what Madra said about being a new type, that they can sense people across long distances, but unfortunately, he can't sense her presence anywhere, no matter how hard he tries. Krishna then says it's okay, and that those powers aren't something one can just use at their own convenience. Avarachi says that he has to take his mind off of it. The ground forces came all this way to help them, and they're gonna need a plan going forward. The Manhunters could attack from any direction at any time, that he has too much to do. He's their leader, and he can't wallow and worry about it right now. But then again, he can't help but still feel afraid. Krishna says it's okay, and that worry is just because of his kind-hearted nature, and she says it's one of the reasons why she likes him so much. Avarachi says thank you, and here's where things start to take a bit of a sharp turn for the worse. Krishna then says, "That's it?" Avarachi is confused. Krishna says that she just told him that she likes him, and all he can tell her is, "Thanks?" Avarachi is taken aback. Krishna then says he said that so carelessly, like how someone would casually say good morning or good night, something you'd say but never take a second to think about. Avarachi is quick to apologize, as he himself isn't sure what's upsetting her, and Krishna says that it's fine, it's all her fault in reality. Avarachi asks if she's okay, if something happened, and Krishna is quick to hug him by the waist. Avarachi is stunned, and Krishna asks him to just hold her. She then says what she's always seen him as, that to her, Avarachi seemed like a god at first, but once she got to know him, to see him worry and suffer, she's realized he's no different from any other person, and that she grew to like him more and more with each passing day because of it. Avarachi places a hand on her, and Krishna says it wasn't like she was lying to him about how she felt, that because of him, she felt useful, and she wanted to feel useful to him, that she saw it as her only way of making herself happy. She didn't even think of things like love or hate when she did it, she just did it subconsciously, and throughout this, it seems she's been unconsciously suppressing those emotions up until this point, and that just for this once, she wants him to hold her, just for this moment. Avarachi understands. He says he'll do this to make her happy, but that even saying that just feels rude. He says he tends to say some things that can be seen as inconsiderate, and he apologizes to her. Krishna says it's fine, and that in all honesty, she's been the one acting inconsiderate, that he's worrying about Everly all this time, and she up and does this to him. Krishna then stands up and says she's sorry. She isn't sure what came over her, and she runs off before Avarachi can ask her if she's okay. But before Avarachi can give chase, the base alarms begin to ring. The camp is under attack. Man machines have been detected flying through the sky. Madra orders the takeoff of the Air Force carriers, and he and Miranda begin loading the wounded onto the transports. He asks Michael to prepare for takeoff, and Joe and Kellen are quick to arrive, with the captain ordering the two of them to get ready in their man machines. As the two pilots get ready, Joe is quick to tell Kellen to let the Gaia squadron focus on defending the transports, and right now, the two of them will try to intercept the enemy and hold them off until the others can evacuate. Meanwhile, Messer and Ray are woken up by the sound of alarms. Ray scrambles to get her gear on as Messer crouches in his sleep. He's got nothing to do with it. Messer says that if she wants, she can use his man machine in the meantime. Ray says fine, and he can slouch here all he wants while she's out there doing her job. She leaves, and Messer complains about her yelling, that he can no longer stand her shouting anymore. We cut over to Miranda. The first transport with the wounded has been loaded and is ready to go, but they still need to load one more. Avarachi goes to meet with her, and the woman tells him to get out into the air. Joe and Kellen have already gone out, and they're just waiting on him. He says he'll head out now, but before he goes, he asks if Miranda has seen Krishna. He still can't find her. Miranda asks why, but Avarachi says to never mind it for the time being. He has to get going to help everyone else with the evac. He tells Miranda to make sure she gets on the last transport, and Miranda agrees to go. With Avarachi hopping into the Gaia Gear, he's suddenly blasted with a sudden splitting headache. He feels a powerful presence approaching, but as the sensation becomes more clear, he can already determine who it is. It's him. It's Yurien. Up in the air, Yurien commands his Gaia squadron to draw out the enemy machines, and that he'll do everything else while they do so, leaving Yurien to talk to himself, and asks Avarachi to wait for him. He's coming to finish this. With Yurien being given command of this unit, his Bromb Texter has been given several more upgrades and weapons. The thing is a monstrous amalgamation of beam weapons and Minovsky tech. Back on the first Air Force carrier, Michael has prepared the ship and it's beginning to launch. Madra says to go, but Miranda says that they still haven't found Krishna. This strikes them as worrying, as the captain thought she'd gotten onto the other ship. But suddenly, Krishna makes her way onto the bridge. They all seem surprised, but they soon brush it off and ask her to take a seat. Miranda asks if something happened, and Krishna says she's fine, but then she's quick to ask about Avarachi, if he's already left. Miranda says yes, and the transport begins to roll out onto the runway, leaving Krishna to subconsciously try to call out to him, not knowing she's using her newly developed new type gifts as she calls his name. But when she calls out to him, another voice calls out to her, someone else's. She asks who said that, but no one responds. She's hearing it again, the voice from her dreams again. Back on the battlefield, Joe and Kellen are holding the line against the coming Bromb Texters. Kellen himself is being rather overconfident, and it seems Yurien's plan to divert their attention is working smoothly. Joe tells him to remain focused though, as more enemies are on the way. The two spot a Bromb Texter, and Kellen goes in for the kill, but as he fires, you can see that the pilot was easily able to avoid his shots. A shot from the Bromb Texter clips Kellen in the shoulder. As he spirals off course, the Bromb Texter makes a beeline for the carriers. Joe warns Avarachi to stop it. Avarachi can sense Yurien's presence as it races towards him. He takes a well-aimed shot at the Bromb Texter's back, but the shot once again misses. He dodged it again, but suddenly, the unit makes a sharp U-turn and tries to ram the Gaia Gear at top speed. Avarachi manages to avoid it, and Yurien mocks him as he flies by. As he chases the Gaia Gear around, telling him he's gotten lazy it seems, he storms past the defensive line, wiping out 3 of the Gaiases with ease as they desperately try to hold him back. Yurien then points out the 2 carriers, that he knows Krishna is on board one of them. Avarachi asks what that has to do with anything, and Yurien slyly says that he'll just have to destroy one of them instead, and if he's lucky, Krishna won't be in the one he picks. Avarachi is stunned, and Yurien laughs maniacally as he fires his beam rifle. Avarachi tries to stop the shot, but it's too late. Back on the carriers, they can see the Bromb Texter circling above. Madra demands to know what the hell the Gaia squadron is doing out there. They're not protecting the carriers. And as Krishna looks at the colors of it, she can tell it's the same one used by Yurien. But as it approaches, 3 Gaiases try to stop its approach. They watch as the same 3 from before get instantly ripped to shreds as the Bromb Texter races past them. As the captain orders them to activate the ship's Manhunters barrier field, they witness as the 2nd Air Force carrier in front of them is blown to smithereens. The ship full of soldiers, crew, and wounded on board being instantly vaporized by the beam energy and the explosion. Another Gussa from behind tries to go for the other carrier with our heroes on board, but luckily gets shot down before it can land a hit on the carrier. The crew turns their heads, and it seems Rey has managed to make it over in time to protect the last ship. The captain then orders her to protect them. They can't take off with the burning wreckage blocking the runway. We cut to Avarachi, and he witnesses the explosion and immediately takes another shot at the Bromb Texter. But when the shot connects, the beam reflects away from the suit, leaving Avarachi frustrated. His weapons have no use against it. Not even his Vulcans or any of his allies can shoot it down with their machine guns. And I'm gonna pause it right here for a second, just for a second. If you're wondering what just happened, there's something I need to mention about Yurien's new Bromb Texter. Up until now, we've seen eye fields before, but one thing that Gaia Gear introduces is a new form of defensive technology, an improvement on the standard eye field. Throughout the radio drama, they refer to these shields as M barriers, or Manhunters barriers. This is also a thing with the ships in Gaia Gear, like with what we just saw with the Air Force carriers. You see, this fancy device is a lot more intimidating than the shields found on suits like the Dendrobium and Unicorn Gundams. You see, unlike an eye field, which is designed to protect and shield against solely beam attacks, but has the drawback of being susceptible to projectile weapons, the man machines of Gaia Gear have these new types of shields called Manhunters barriers, or M barriers for short, which have the ability to shrug off beam attacks as well as projectiles. Now, you might be saying that's insane, and how do you beat something as powerful as that? That's practically invincible. And actually, the good thing is, M barriers aren't infallible or invincible. They do have many weaknesses, but they have to be circumnavigated with specific types of damage, making them not invincible, but really tricky to get around when you're in a machine that's fighting another one with an M barrier installed. There are two methods to breaking an M barrier. I won't say what one of them is, but I'll tell you one of them now. The easiest trick to beating an M barrier is explosive attacks. Not direct hits from projectiles like rockets, bazooka rounds, missiles, or bullets, but specifically attacks that can utilize shrapnel and scatter-based methods of damage. These shields rely on focusing Manhunters particles in specific areas around the suit. This means that M barriers can be powerful upon first encounter, but you'll only be able to get past them if you get close enough and use weapons or damage that can negate it. Machine guns and Vulcans can work, but you have to be really close to get past the shield, leaving the only proper weapons to deal with them being shotguns or proximity bombs or nearby explosions. If you do that, you have a higher chance of landing a hit on it instead of with an average missile, funnel, or bazooka round that tries to go for the suit directly. You see, these barriers prioritize larger objects trying to hit the suit, rather than smaller and erratically moving ones. And I'm glad the UC timeline introduces a new type of shield that is an improvement over the standard eye field, but also is incredibly balanced. It's a cool thing to introduce, and I'm glad it's revealed to be incredibly balanced for a piece of defensive tech. It still has weaknesses, but those weaknesses are really hard to overcome. Anyways, if you thought that was crazy for this story to go ahead and introduce that type of tech, then be warned. This isn't the biggest upgrade to mobile weapons you'll see in Gaia Gear. Just wait till we get to the final arc. Then you're gonna see some real crazy shit. Anyways, that's it for my little tangent. Soon after he fires, Avarachi immediately realizes that the M barrier is protecting Yurien's suit. Yurien laughs maniacally again. It's useless. He's invincible. But suddenly, right from beside him, Joe shows up from behind to try and land a shot on him. Avarachi tries to warn him, but Yurien looks over his shoulder and can see the tiny DH-3B Dochati racing towards him. Yurien takes no effort in blasting Joe's poor grunt suit in the legs, sending the poor Dochati hurtling towards the ground. Avarachi tries firing again, and Yurien simply dodges it again. This leaves Avarachi stunned. The guy is easily able to predict his shots. As Avarachi asks how this is even possible, Avarachi then realizes what's going on. Yurien is a new type. His suit has a Psychomu, just like the Gaia Gear. The splitting headaches he's been getting whenever he gets into the Gaia Gear, and the sensation he always feels whenever he can sense Yurien in a battle, is because he's using his own Psychomu to attack Avarachi's mind through it. Yurien laughs maniacally again. It seems Avarachi has finally figured it out, that thanks to it, he's been able to grow his powers to become his equal. No, even better than his equal. The Psychomu can bring out the fullest potential in a person. To that fact, he knows he's surely surpassed even him with this new boost in power. Avarachi exclaims that it's dangerous to be using that tech, that a Psychomu can cause great damage to one's mind. But Yurien sneers. Why does he care what happens to him? They're enemies after all. He then asks Avarachi if he's a real new type, that why can't he sense Everly right now with his powers? Before Avarachi can say anything, Yurien reveals that she's being held captive on Dargle's flagship. Avarachi says he's lying, and Yurien says that once she learned that Avarachi and his allies came to Europe, she came running to see him, but instead, she was found by the captain. Avarachi says he's lying again, and Yurien asks if he can hear her sad little pathetic cries for help. And if he can't, then he's just a poor excuse for a true new type. As Avarachi gets angrier, Yurien says that he's gonna end this, right here, right now. He'll fall prey to him with this attack with his funnels. Avarachi asks what they are, and Yurien says he's just gonna have to avoid them to find out. The Bromb Texter's shields rotate, like cogs in a clock. Several tiny little objects fly out from ports in the twin shields' rings. They zip around like wasps around the Gaia Gear. Before Avarachi can react, 3 of them blast the Gaia Gear in the back, knocking it out of the sky and shredding the machine's wing binders as it falls. The Gaia Gear crashes. We cut to the Air Force carrier. The crew sees that the Gaia Gear was shot down. Krishna panics, and she opens the door and makes a run for the loading ramp before anyone can stop her. Captain then orders Ray to go and help Avarachi. Krishna opens the door, and Messer comes in, and Krishna tells him what happened. Before he can stop her, he makes a dash for the motorbikes that are sitting in the carrier's gantry. She bolts away on it, and Messer asks her where the Gaia Gear went. It seems the unit fell into the woods just outside the base. Out in the woods, Ray is struggling to find the Gaia Gear. She calls his name, screaming that this is no place for him to die. But another one of Yurien's funnels clips the bazooka in the Dochati's hand. She tells Yurien not to underestimate her, and Yurien says that she really isn't worth killing with his funnels. Just his beam rifle will be enough to shoot her down. He then fires, and the Dochati is forced to reel back into the forest. As the Bromb Texter descends, it seems he managed to scare her off, and that with it, he doesn't seem to care either way. Now, it's time to finish this. Yurien marches slowly towards the shattered remains of the Gaia Gear, wondering if this is really it. He's not gonna do anything, not gonna fight back. He sees the busted machine as it lies on the ground. Seems the unit is out of commission. Fine, then he'll just have to rip the damn thing open and drag him out himself. The Bromb Texter then reaches down and begins to try and pry open the cockpit hatch with its own hands. As the cockpit hatch is ripped open and thrown to the other side of the clearing, Avarachi manages to open his eyes, and he can see the open cockpit hatch of Yurien's Bromb Texter, the harsh shining lights from inside the pilot's seat beaming down on him. The man laughs maniacally. He's finally awake. He then tries to reach into the suit with the Bromb Texter and grab him with the suit's fingers. But before the fingers can touch him, they both hear the sound of Krishna's voice screaming as she calls out to them, with Messer as well trying to get her to stay back. But unfortunately, the girl isn't listening to him. She runs over to the 2 machines and is surprised to see that Yurien survived himself. Yurien laughs. It seems she wasn't on the ship he blew up after all. It seems she's very lucky. The Bromb Texter then reels back its hand and reaches over and grabs Krishna by the waist. She yells at him to let her go, but Yurien smirks. He could easily snap her like a twig if he added just a little more pressure. Krishna then tells him to go on ahead and do it, and the man laughs. He's not gonna do that. He then takes her and begins to fly away, Messer yelling at him, leading to Yurien to scorch the ground beside him with one of the funnels zipping around through the air. With Yurien yelling at Messer not to mess with him, the blast knocking the guy off his feet and sending him flying back into the bushes. It is here that Yurien asks Krishna to come with him. Avarachi, being weakened, says no, he isn't taking her. But strangely, now that Krishna is here, Yurien is surprisingly not wanting to kill him right now. He has a much bigger prize in mind right now. He then says that if he lets him take her, he'll spare his life. Avarachi asks what the hell he means. Yurien then says that he seems rather frustrated right now, but really there's nothing he can do do. All Yurien wants to do is take from him, piece by piece, until finally, in the end, he'll have his life. Avarachi growls his name, and Yurien laughs again. He's gonna look forward to that moment. The Bromb Texter then blasts off into the air, taking Krishna in its hand and tightly and ripping her away from the others, screaming Avarachi's name as the Bromb Texter blasts off into the night sky, Yurien's forces withdrawing and leaving the forces of Metatron in a smoldering ruin. Avarachi is frozen. Messer rushes up to him and demands to know why on earth he let him take her, but Avarachi is still frozen with shock as the man shakes him, his eyes closing as he begins to pass out from his injuries. He beat him. Yurien has won. Episode 17. Defeat is its name. There's no other way of putting it. These guys are at their lowest right now. Avarachi just got beaten by Yurien, and he took Krishna. Not to mention the fact he just took out everyone while on his rampage. Jesus, this is bad. Not even the poor Gaiases were enough to stop this dude. He smoked 3 of them like they were nothing. And damn, I hate his Bromb Texter so much right now. Now, you may be wondering, why does this artwork here depict Krishna getting kidnapped, but she's wearing a normal suit of all things, as well as being set in space and with a red Bromb Texter instead of the blue production type? Well, that's actually an easy answer, and it's just the different continuities. You see, most of the artwork that belongs to Gaia Gear is actually meant to depict the events of the novels, rather than the radio drama. Things in the books play out in some significantly different ways. In the books, Miranda is part of their crew when they go to LALAH'S, rather than in the radio drama where she stays behind. In the radio drama, the Gaia Gear isn't completed until the halfway point, so instead they use the test type version towards the beginning and in the fight with Zhang and his Gussa. The suit is actually completed all the way back on the boat in the books. During the LALAH'S trip, they actually bring the Gaia Gear with them, so yeah, the art is a little unreliable at telling events depicted in this story, but nonetheless still offer important key visuals for both stories. As for the one moment that's most important to this episode, the part where Krishna is kidnapped by Yurien in the books actually happened all the way back at the LALAH'S trip. In the books, Avarachi isn't able to get her back from him there, so instead the story goes in a bit of a different direction as the story evolves. Not by much, but definitely in some jarring ways. Now, I feel so bad for Krishna right now. This poor girl in the last episodes has had pretty much the worst day of her life. When she tries to seek emotional comfort in her idol, that being Avarachi, the guy is understandably weirded out. Remember, he is engaged, but don't worry, it's okay. At least she recognizes that. I still feel bad for Jo, cause she didn't exactly let him try to really help her. But now, she's gone ahead and fallen into the big trap that's been set up for her all this time by Yurien. And later on in these final episodes, she'll actually start to make some big changes for herself. Ones that I wouldn't expect from someone whose entire shtick is all about purity and naivete. It's really not good that this change is gonna happen when she's with Yurien. But this aspect of her character shifting after this semi-rejection by Avarachi is going to start her down a very interesting path. Unfortunately, I just wish that it didn't have to come from her being with Yurien now. Seriously? Yurien? What the heck? I still hate this asshole so much, but what you'll see coming up with the most lovable character being with the most hateable, I don't know, it just makes me feel so conflicted about all of it. Now, I have no doubt that Yurien was trying to use his powers to manipulate her in some facet, but the fact that their chemistry was set up from the get-go, I don't know once again how I feel about it, and it comes off as a very big uncertainty throughout the rest of the story. Now, one of the things I will say is that the one thing I do like about Krishna doesn't really have to do with her as a character, but rather the connections she and Everly share with the character who spawned the two of them and their similar and very different traits that are shared between the three of them, that being Lalah Sune. Now, you might be wondering something about Everly and Krishna. Why does this story have 2 Lalah-esk characters in it? Everly hasn't done very much in the story, and her role so far hasn't been super impactful, but that's where you're wrong though. Gaia Gear has 2 Lalah characters because it needs 2 Lalah characters. Everly is Avarachi's anchor to this world. Without her, he has no purpose to do anything. Remember, this whole mission of his to protect the Earth from Dargle was so that he and Everly's little island home could remain secluded unclouded, unpolluted, and beautiful. But now you might be asking, why does this story need Krishna then? Well, that's actually one of the interesting things about Gaia Gear. You see, Gaia Gear was a work of Tomino's that aimed to deconstruct Gundam and its tropes, and it does so really, really well. You have a protagonist that you'd think is supposed to act like Char, turn out to be a better person than him, and one that more aligns with the philosophies of Amuro. You have his rival, a man who should be playing the role of protagonist in this story, turn out to be a creepy, manipulative asshole with an inferiority complex, something that Tomino himself tried to show us the problems with before with his creation of Camille, now turned into a hybrid of Camille and Jared, whose sole problem is that he hates everyone who he sees as being above him in some way. And finally, the one thing I want to bring up is that of Krishna and Everly. These two characters actually embody two separate halves of Lalah's own personality. Both of these women show us the two clear and distinct views and love interests that Lalah had throughout the original Gundam story towards Amuro and Char, but now those existing views have been separated to form the two characters that are Everly and Krishna. Everly embodies the part of Lalah that loved Char and never wanted to leave his side. Krishna embodies the part of Lalah that was conflicted when she met Amuro, and it threw a wrench and drove a rift between her and Char and grew to form her brief romance with Amuro. And if you look at these two characters, they actually serve these roles really well, and they serve as really good alternate scenarios for Lalah if she had a different fate than the one she had originally been given. Everly being a version of Lalah that stayed with Char in the end, and Krishna being a version of Lalah that would survive the events of the original Gundam to be with Amuro in the end. However, with Krishna, it takes that concept and gives it a dark twist, showing us a Lalah-like character who ends up with a character who fills Amuro's role, but is ultimately cruel, abusive, and manipulative towards her. Something that I find very interesting as a concept for Gaia Gear as one of the tropes it deconstructs about Gundam. These two girls being the closest and most polarizing takes on Lalah-like characters. I just think it's very intriguing that Tomino decided to address it like this. As for the big surprise, that being the Bromb Texter has funnels, it's a nice setup in terms of power when it comes to Gaia Gear's man machines. The thing is once again cool, but also highly disgusting in how it's used. The thing reeks of Cubile Mark II energy, sickly funnel-spewing monster machine vibes. Anyways, that's it for this episode. This episode was rather short as it was once again filled with action, but we are in a bit of a sorry state as our heroes just got their asses handed to them. With episode 18, things are going to get even more severe, and I can't wait to show you what happens next, as the next episode has one of the biggest reveals about the Manhunters in the story, and it's one of the coolest things that Gaia Gear introduces in its story, one that has highly extreme ramifications for the UC as a whole. Anyways, tune in next time, where I'll be going into episode 18. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, turn on notification bell to be caught up with the story, and this is Gaia Guys, signing off. Bye!